Well, all right. Welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you joining the podcast, I'm Lisa Thomas with Employment Inc., and we specialize in helping manufacturing executives transform their retention challenges into sustainable competitive advantages through our three level assessment methodology. So, if you want to learn how to achieve 96% retention rates while building teams that outlast you, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free retention analysis for your organization, just drop us the word retention in the comments. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Scott Pitney. Scott, would you tell us a little bit about your career journey and what you love about Katy Spring?
Sure, Lisa. Thank you for having me as a guest. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, we started Katy Spring back in 1999. A co-founder as well. So I've been with the company over 26 years now. And yeah, prior to that, I did work for a competitor now. So I've been in the spring business very close to 30 years. Although I'm not the longest tenured spring employee of the company. Our president James West has
He's
been
got you
with.
beat.
He's got me beat by a few years,
Mhm,
yeah, which is kind of one thing I think that makes Katy Spring unique. James's
mhm.
dad actually was in the spring business, Claude West, for 40 years. He ran a spring manufacturing company on the production floor. And James went in to the spring business right out of high school at age 19. He's been in the spring business. I won't away his age for a
Started when
while.
he was a baby.
Yeah, a while. James's son, Jason West, who is our general manager now and a shareholder as well, he followed his dad's footsteps and right out of high school,
Oh,
started with Katy Spring, which is about the same time we started Katy Spring back in
mhm.
1999. So we are three generations of spring makers. Can you believe that?
That's amazing. That's
I think it's pretty unique.
it's very unique, actually,
Yeah.
very unique, and something to be proud of for sure.
But I think what's important to know for our customers to know that is that with all that spring knowledge, that's all being passed down to our employees, both on the
Mhm.
shop floor, our estimators. A lot of our estimating team comes from the shop too. So they have firsthand knowledge of what they're doing there in estimating.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When we talked before, you mentioned the 12 points of culture and that it's everywhere. I would love, yeah, how did you develop these and what role do they play in keeping your employees engaged?
Yeah. Well, we were introduced to the 12 points of culture when we brought in a business consultant about 10 years ago. And he said that he implemented this with another one of his clients. And it was something that went well. And he started to use it on a regular basis for his consulting services. And when we saw it right away, we liked it. So we modified it to fit our particular culture. Yes, our 12 points of culture, it describes who we are as a company and as a family, more on a personal level, our character and things like that. And we have the 12 points of culture, on our website. You walk all through the company in the office, the shop, our QC lab. The 12 points of culture are everywhere. And they're not just a picture. They're not just a decoration.
You know, I'm
They,
going to ask that question next.
we, yeah, sorry to steal your thunder on the question,
No,
but
it's okay. You just go ahead and how do you make sure that it's not just a decoration on the wall, which is where you're going, right? So how do you do
right,
that?
right. So, yeah, it is a great tool for basically having a foundation that we revert to in coaching sessions, employee reviews, things like that. I'll give you a specific example. One of our points of culture, Lisa, is that we do what we say we're going to do. And so if an employee maybe drops the ball in that area, then when we're having a coaching session, we'll go back to that point of culture. Just a reminder, this is who we are, and what
Mhm.
we are about, and doing what we say we're going to do is part of that. And there's things like that, but there's also other things like fun and laughter. I mean, we are human beings
Right.
after all, and that's what companies are made up of. So there's a lot of human element to the 12 points of culture as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What is the most surprising result of having your culture defined that way? And how do new employees respond when they see it?
I think that it is received very well by new employees. They kind of look at that and they said, well, this is a company that really cares about their employees and they pay a lot of attention. It's not just about making money. It's about how we work together. And these are people's lives and their livelihood. I mean, We spend more time at work than we do with our families, most of us, and that's why I brought up the word family. That's a big part of that, and we want people to feel like they're part of the family. I think the 12 points of culture definitely serves that purpose.
Well, it's important to have a North Star. It's important to define the behaviors that you're looking for so people know what is expected of them. And I'm assuming the 12 points of culture help with that.
Yeah, and, on the other spectrum too, with customers that come visit our plant too, they
Hmm.
see the 12 points of culture, we talk about it, they ask about it, and some of them, I've had some customers just stop and read it, and I'm kinda watching their face, and they start smiling, they start nodding their head, and they go, this is really good. We need this in our company."
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important to have a shared leadership language so everyone's clear. The vocabulary is clear. What does it mean when we say culture and your 12 points of culture or what it means? That's awesome. You mentioned that customers find knowing the same person who made their spring and last month or 2 months ago is making their springs again this month. How do you position your high retention rates as a selling point?
Well, that's you described it in brief pretty well there, Lisa. Yeah, it is important to retain employees for many reasons, but specifically, for example, on the shop floor, when you make a spring, it goes through several processes, maybe coiling, grinding, and finishing. So there's many touch
Mhm.
points with different employees throughout that process. But having the same employees making those springs, that's going to keep your quality up, that's going to keep your
Right.
efficiencies up, which are very important, of course, to the bottom line, because without a strong bottom line, you can't reinvest in new equipment, in keeping your employees and being competitive with pay rates and benefits and
Mhm.
things like that. Those are all very important elements that in the end our customers benefit from, and our employees. And a lot of times we call our employees also our internal customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very important as well. But yeah, so there's that repeatability. Analogy I like to use is baking a cake. Now I'm a terrible baker, but if I bake a cake enough times, eventually it's going to get better, and I'm going to get faster at it as
Mhm.
it goes on. That's kind of how that works, especially in the production shop, but even in the office. The people, our account managers, our estimators, everybody at some point in the office will talk to a customer eventually. And it's comforting for customers to see those people year after year after year. They see them in email chains that they might talk to them directly, but to see that repeatability. And I can speak from the other side of that. When I'm talking to customers, and sometimes I see that turnover, new buyers every year or two or something like that.
Right.
I think that's kinda high turnover. It kinda raises an eyebrow, like, what's going on in that company? What is going on and what's causing the turnover? And a lot of times, that ties to the performance of the company. And so
Absolutely.
we make sure that we not only have competitive pay and benefits for our employees, but we want to do other things, and I know we're gonna talk about some of those things to retain our employees, but ultimately, our customers benefit in the end, and so do our employees by being happy.
Absolutely, absolutely, and the next question was the business case, and I think you just gave us the business case, repeatable quality, continuity of contact, certainly a tighter team, a team that knows how to work together, so you're not constantly training someone. That can keep you that can make it hard to continue to progress and grow when you constantly are bringing a new person onto the team and training them and getting them up to speed. Those were a few things I picked up. Is there anything else that helps us with the business case for retention?
Well, yeah, the bottom line, I mean, it's expensive to hire employees, both in the shop and the office. In some cases, we've used recruiters in some cases to
Mhm.
bring in employees, so there's that expense. But the time, the administrative cost of interviewing and checking references and then training, for a lot of positions, it takes 90 days or so for that employee to become really truly productive for the company and themselves. And so there's expense to all that. And every time you have a turnover, you incur all those expenses. So
Yeah,
as I mentioned earlier, we want to maintain a healthy bottom line so that we can continue to reinvest in our employees and our equipment. And again, in the end, our customers benefit from that.
yeah, the cost of retention staggering. So, in the United States, I think it's estimated at 25.5 billion of what it's costing us here, which, I I consider that kind of leading out, really, to be honest with you. That's a huge number. And if we look at it more on just a business to business scale, if you hired 10 people and you lost three in the first year, that could cost you up to $2 million between
Oh,
indirect and direct costs. We have a
yeah.
tool called the bad hire calculator that helps you wrap your head around that because I have to admit, the first time I filled it out, I was like, I don't believe that. We give you the math too when we do the bad hire calculator, so you can see how we calculate the math. And if you agree on the math, it's hard to disagree with the number, and it's staggering when you look
Numbers
at
don't
that,
lie.
especially if that person's customer facing, right? It could really be a challenge. So
Yeah.
when you're competing for new business, how often does your current employee stability become a deciding factor with your customers? Do you think like all other things competitive, that's a competitive advantage, or do you see it differently?
Yeah, I think it's a competitive advantage. Initially, when you're onboarding a customer, I do talk about these things quite a bit. And I think it's just one of the things that adds to the customer, the deciding factor of using us or not. But I think it really comes into play more after they have used us over several years that, we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk. And they're still speaking to those same people that they spoke with when we onboarded them and they're enjoying the quality that they get from us. Our company has a very high quality rating that we're very proud of, and so it may not directly tie back to employee retention at the beginning, but it sure
It
they
eventually
sure
catches
see
up
it.
with it, doesn't
Yeah, they see it
it?
as time moves on. That's right.
Right, right. No, as a customer, yeah, customers like a single point of contact. They like knowing the person they talked to 6 months ago knows everything about them and knows how they like their material ordered, packed, whatever special things they might require. They appreciate that continuity of service. It's really important, and retention drives that. Um, you start people in entry level positions. So when someone new comes into the shop, they're in an entry level position where the work can be repetitive. How do you help new hires see the bigger picture and the potential growth opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question because it is tough. I've done those jobs myself as a startup, as you can
Yeah,
imagine, wearing a lot of hats. And I worked in the shop, in the early days and went through those interesting times. I'll put it like that because I'm not a person that's good at repetition and things like that. And that's why I have so great appreciation for the people that do those positions. And some people just aren't cut out for it. But for example, in the grinding area, the operators loading springs into these holes just over and over and over again. And I did that myself when we started the company. So it's tough. It's tough. But as they stay there longer and they start talking to other employees and they see that we promote from within a lot and they don't, it's not just something we talk about during the interview process. They actually see it once they're hired and talking to other employees, they visit during breaks, things like that. And then also, even when they're driving into the parking lot, we have personalized parking signs. We have designated parking signs after
mhm,
employees have been there for a few years. They get their own parking sign and it has their name on it. This spot's reserved for this person and the tenure, how long they've been there. So they're seeing this person's been here 5 years, 10 years, even, longer. And so there's things like that that I think they see right away. This company puts a lot of interest in and invests a lot in their employees, but then they see it long term as well.
absolutely. And so I think the parking spots, that's a brilliant idea.
Not
What
mine, but yeah,
It's a
was.
brilliant idea, I love it.
Yeah,
I would love to
yeah.
have an assigned spot everywhere I went. That would be fantastic, right? Because you know you're
Right.
gonna have a spot.
Just seeing your name up there, that's
Yeah,
on a
that's
sign is very cool.
it is. I would think that that would be very, inspiring and empowering for the team members that reach that milestone. What other kind of recognition programs have you found, resonate with your manufacturing employees?
We do a lot of training, and so, we actually have a library too in our, HR department, and, during, review times, a lot of times we'll, suggest material for people to be continually educated, and I think that, those kind of things, that show that we're willing to invest in training is a good way to show people that we care about them not just getting the job done, but also about their growth. As I said, we always want to try to promote from within. So we want to prepare people for those opportunities when they come up. And so investing in training is a big part of Katy Spring.
Absolutely. And so I'm sure safety training is all a part of that, making sure everyone knows exactly what the conditions are in the plant and how to be prepared for them.
Yeah, and our HR department does a great job of that, and that's specific for the type of position. We also have a training or a safety consulting
Hmm.
company that comes in and audits us, a third party audit to help us keep our safety program strong. And then we also have just recently hired a manager that's oversees quality assurance and safety as part of his responsibility as well. We invest a lot of time and money into safety of our employees, and I'm happy to say I was touring the, plant yesterday with a customer and, looked up at the days of lost time
Hmm.
accidents were 5, 7 it's well over a year and approaching
Fantastic.
2 years, yeah, without any lost time accidents. We're very happy with that.
That's fantastic. Employees need to know where they're going. They're going to get to go home, maybe in a little bit more tired, but basically the same condition that they arrived in the morning. That is critical for anyone's productivity, for sure.
Yeah,
I
to your point there, that's another good point. We, did a lot of studies on shift work and stuff like that, and we decided to start a second shift years ago, and they're 10-hour shifts. They overlap, I think, about an hour each day. Those employees, they work 4 days a week, so everybody gets a 3-day weekend.
Oh, that's nice too. I can say I would appreciate that.
Well, now that's in the shop, and then in the office, we do work at a 980 schedule, so employees get every other Friday off. So every other weekend is a 3-day weekend.
That I could live with that as well. That would be a wonderful benefit.
Not too bad,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. When someone does leave, what are the most common reasons and how has that feedback shaped your retention strategies?
Yeah, it's usually on the production floor, and it goes back to those entry level jobs. A lot of people they want to give it a try, and they're sincere about it. I think anyway. I don't, I'm sure some just want a job and they have
Mhm.
something down the road, but I think most of them come in wanting to make it work. And ultimately, even though they may see the big picture down the road, they just, it's just not for them, that repetitive type of work. So every time we do have someone leave the company, we conduct an exit interview. And those notes that we take from those exit interviews help us to build strategies for future hires.
Fantastic. It's always important to learn. Continuous
Absolutely.
learning,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you all have successfully diversified your business from like primarily oil and gas to where oil and gas is now a portion of your business. How did you communicate that strategic shift to employees who were accustomed to serving one industry? Are the requirements different, the same? How does that diversity of client and industry impact production?
Yeah. It doesn't really apply so much to the folks on the floor, except we are in the Houston area, so everybody's affected by oil and gas,
Whether
even the
you want to be or
guys.
not.
We started out at 100% oil and gas in 1999, and, because of the company I previously worked for, I'd been down that road already, and oil and gas is great when it's great, and it's terrible when it's not. So,
It's one or the other.
right. I wanted to smooth out those waves a little bit. And, we obviously don't want to lose any oil and gas business. It's a good fit for us. But at the same time, I wanted to shrink that percentage down by building other industries into the company. And so, fast forward 26 years, we're about 35 to 40% oil and gas today. And ultimately, I'd like to see that number to about 25%, again, with any losing any oil and gas business, but just adding other types of customers. But there are certain types of materials, high nickel alloys and things like that, that are used frequently in the oil and gas business. So there is, because those materials are processed a little bit differently, there is some training involved. And we do that with the production floor on that type of business sector a little bit.
Mhm.
But, it doesn't make too much difference to them what type of industry that we're in. I think it is just the
Spring
fact that
is the spring. I mean,
that
they're
we're
all
growing.
custom. They're all custom,
Right,
right? And
right.
so they have their own. Each spring has its own unique requirements, is what it sounded
Yeah,
like when you described
yeah,
it before. Okay.
yeah, but I just think that being more diversified, will help increase our growth. And, when we were heavier oil and gas, I said we started at 100, but when we got down to, uh, maybe 60%, 70%, we were still feeling it. I mean, we felt it back in 2009. We felt it back in 2015. Yeah, then at that time it directly impacted because unfortunately we had some staff reduction during those times because of oil and gas. And as a salesperson, that hurts me inside to let
It
somebody go
hurts your heart, doesn't it?
it
I
let
agree.
somebody go that
Not
they
their
did nothing
fault.
wrong. I
Yeah,
mean, it's just a product of what's going on with the industry, and so I wanna do everything I can to keep those rides smooth and to not let anybody go because of an industry reduction.
absolutely. I understand your commitment. I feel the same way with my team. Want to be sure they've got plenty to do,
Yeah, exactly.
without a doubt. So we talked about COVID and supply chain disruptions and how that kind of turned into a Super Bowl year in 2021 for you. How did your team handle the intense workload while maintaining quality?
Well, same way we handle intense workloads now. We still have peaks and valleys. Although that you're right, that was an extreme back in those days because well, back in those days, it's hard to believe that COVID was 5 years ago. I mean, first off,
I know it. It was just yesterday, and it feels like we're still struggling with it, to be
it does.
honest.
A couple of years out, around 2022, when we started seeing the supply chain disruptions, we took a proactive stance and reached out to our customers and said, "Hey, these 4 or 5 week lead times you have in your ERP, throw those out the window. We're looking at 6, 9 months down the road on some material
Stuff.
availability." And they're
Mhm.
like, "Really?" And yeah, and we said, "So our recommendation is that you order now so that we can order the raw material and secure the raw material, and we'll work with you on shipments and things like that, so we're not loading up your inventory."
Right.
We were successful, very successful in doing that. So yeah, we did have a good booking year that year because a lot of our customers took it to heart and did just that. And we also knew that by doing that, people basically ordering early, that we might have a softer year the following year because
Right.
people's inventory
And more
levels
inventory.
were up,
Yeah.
including ours, and that did happen, in fact. And so there it went down a little bit, but really not as much as I thought. I was pleasantly surprised the following years. And then, yeah, fast forward to today, and now we have, tariffs. So,
Right. That's
that
the next question, tariffs and
oh,
economic uncertainty. So look, you're reading my mind.
yeah, well, they definitely tied it because that's what everybody was thinking, at the beginning of this year,
Mhm.
tariff, 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 and what's going on. And so we took the same approach. We went to our material suppliers who get their information from the mills, and I call the mills the Wizard of Oz. It seems like they're mystic. They kind of stand behind the
Behind the
curtain.
curtain.
They kind of control everything, and
Yeah.
they're not going to
Mhm.
give up too much information. But anyway, we've been working with that for years and years, so we know what to expect. But our distributors were giving us information as best they could about what was going on there, and so there was a little bit of concern of price increase and deliveries and
Right.
things like that. Put that messaging out to our customers and just told them what we knew and told them what we didn't know. And so with that uncertainty, it never materialized anything close to what it was back in supply chain shortage days. But, we're 3/4 of the way through the year, more or less, and we haven't seen it yet. Doesn't mean that it won't come, but I'm feeling better that we're not going to see the supply chain shortage situation that we saw several years ago.
Yes. I hope we don't. That was very challenging times for sure.
It
I
was.
was I was in supply chain at that time, and it was interesting some of the challenges we had around materials. You
Yeah.
get creative, I'll say that. And that's one of the questions. Having a stable workforce, how does that help you navigate those industry ups and downs, right? I mean, it's a critical piece of how to navigate, in my opinion, having the continuity of your team.
Yeah, well, you got to keep a cool head in those situations,
Hmm.
and many people that were with us back, 4 or 5 years ago when that the supply chain shortage happened are still with us today, and so it's almost like, okay, here we go again. We all know what to
Yeah.
do.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
That's right. Good.
let's go
Been
do
there,
it.
done that, got the t-shirt.
Exactly. Yep.
So, in custom spring manufacturing, how much of your quality consistency comes from having the same skilled hands making the same products repeatedly?
Kind of what we talked about earlier. And it really starts in the office too, having that retention. The goal is to, when we put a job ticket on the floor, that we don't want to disrupt any production by an operator or someone having to come into the office and go, hey, what is this tolerance or what does this note mean or anything like that. It's having that retention and those are, that's our estimating and account managers that are part of that and very important contract review. And so having those same folks up there, again, just like the production floor, the longer they're out there, the better they get at their job, the more efficient they get at in
Right.
their job. Same thing happens in the office. So we see less mistakes. And when those job tickets do hit the floor and everything runs smooth,
Absolutely. That
at least
kind
that's
of
what we strive for.
right, right.
Yeah.
And continuity of your team definitely makes a big impact into that. You mentioned coaching engineers who may not have bought springs in years. And how does employee expertise become a part of your customer service model?
Yeah. I, Best way to answer that, I think, is one of the examples that we've recently started doing that's working real well, and that's lunch and learns. And we have them remotely for our customers that have large engineering teams. A lot of those engineers, they don't work with spring design all the time, or they haven't worked with spring designs. Some of them since they've been in school. It might be
Mhm.
10 years ago or something like that. So I always tell our customers, tell your engineering team to give us the space the spring works in, give us the environment, and then the forces they need, and then let us do the heavy lifting with our design software and things like
Mhm.
that. That's on a daily basis. But what the lunch and learns do, they go a little bit deeper, and there's a lot of Q&A, and they've been very well received. In fact, they're scheduled for about 60 minutes, and the last one we did lasted 90 minutes. It's not
Wow, lots of
uncommon for
questions,
yeah,
huh?
not uncommon for them to go over,
Mhm.
but I sit in those lunch and learns, Lisa, and I'm just so excited to see our employees. I answer very few questions. I keep my mouth shut, which is
That's
great because I
fantastic.
get to eat my food first.
Exactly. It's hard to talk and eat at the same time.
Yeah. But, they do a great job. Matt and Ryan do most of those lunch and learns.
Mhm.
Ryan's our operations manager, Matt's our lead estimator. And just to hear all that knowledge pouring out from them, teaching our customers, engineers about spring design, it's a neat thing to watch.
That's a wonderful way to approach it too. The lunch and learns are fun, and it's a safe space to ask questions too. Creates a safe
Absolutely. Yeah.
space, yeah, for
Yeah.
conversation. Do you have a specific example of how employee continuity prevented a quality issue or solved a customer problem?
Yeah, we're working on a job right now. This job comes up about every 2 years or so, and it's a difficult job. In fact, I think if most of our competitors saw the drawing on this,
Tap out.
they would know quote. Yeah, tap it. That I like that. I'm gonna remember that. Said a
Tap
no
out.
quote. We'll tap out. And so definitely the lead operators, the experienced employees with the knowledge from those previous jobs. I think we've run this job about, I want to say about a half a dozen times or so. I may be off on that, but every year we get better and better at mitigating problems with that job. And because it is a difficult job, but that's just one example of many. I'm sure there's many that I haven't even thought of yet, but that's just one that comes to mind because we're doing it right now. So yeah, it's very important that we have that retention, especially for our lead guys, our team leaders that are teaching the operators, because some of the operators on this job are fairly new employees, or sometimes they're even temporary employees, but they have to have the knowledge to be able to train and teach these employees how to run the job and to make sure that they have all the quality checks in place and to know when to raise the flag and say, hey,
Right.
because we do a lot of SPC charting in our shop too.
Mhm.
And so as we're charting these jobs, if they get outside those green lines, they go, hey, hands up and
So employees
this
have the
is
decision rights to stop.
right. Yeah, exactly. So,
Fantastic.
so that's a great tool, SPC.
You bet. I love incremental checks. That's always
Yes,
good. Make sure we're on the right and we're heading down the right path and you can absolutely catch things but while they're still correctable. That's
exactly.
when we want to catch them.
Yes.
So, as you look at the next 2 years and continued growth, How are you planning to scale your workforce while maintaining your culture?
We're not going to make too many changes how we scale our workforce. We've been very fortunate. One thing we didn't plan, Lisa, that we just kind of got lucky is being in Katy, Texas helps a lot. Now, Katy is 30 miles west of downtown Houston. For those listeners that are not familiar, it's 30 miles west of downtown Houston. Believe it or not, Katie's up to 500,000 in population now. We have
Wow.
7 exits off of Interstate 10, I think.
Oh, you've arrived.
Yeah. So as Katy Springs grown over the last 26 years, but there's been tremendous growth in Katy. And a lot of those employees, they don't want to go into Houston. They don't want to fight that I-10 traffic. And so they love that there's a quality company to work for. And there's now other companies that are figuring that out, bigger companies like Amazon and companies like that are setting up shop out in Katy. And so but, and when that started, I thought, well, we're going to have some competition now, some fruiting competition. But so far, I don't think so. HR might might not agree with that opinion, but from where I sit, and I don't have day-to-day optics on it, but I think even with these companies coming in, Katie's still growing at a rate that there's still a very good pool of talent out there. So we were very fortunate in that regard to be in Katy and to be in a town like that has grown as fast as it has.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're considered a staple as far as, key employers in the area. And there are certainly advantages and disadvantages for where you're located for recruiting and retention. You touched on a few, and the advantages of recruiting in the area. So, because the traffic's, if folks haven't traveled to Houston lately, the traffic's a little rough.
Oh,
Would you agree with that?
it's yeah, I would. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been here all my life, and it's just like the heat and humidity, you don't get used to it. But and I think the other thing too is you don't run into spring manufacturing companies all over the place. We are basically a unique company. It's safe to say that we are the only spring manufacturing company in Katy. So I think there's a little bit of curiosity too about, wow, there's a company that makes springs. I want to learn more about that. And they want to be a part of something unique like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoy the complexity of it. It's like anything when you start to really peel back the layers and you can see what it takes to execute. Springs they can be complicated, can't they?
Yeah.
Have very tight tolerances and need to do certain very specific things, right?
Yeah, you're dead on. And, if you don't know that, and I know you've been in procurement, so you have a good understanding of that. But for many that don't, they're in a completely different business. And you bring up springs, it's like, oh, that's just a little hardware item. And, we get that
It's a
too.
slinky.
Yeah, we get that too. Somebody, they need a spring for their 66 Oldsmobile or their
Hmm.
broken rocket chair.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, oh, it's like buying a bolt or a nut and,
Hmm.
I'll get a spring and it's fixed. But no, we're strictly a custom manufacturer. So
Hmm.
there's
No
there's
walk-in.
set up and all that. Yeah. And all those minimums add up pretty quick. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's when you don't know anything about it visually, it just looks like a simple piece of metal,
Okay. Yeah.
but it's
No,
not
I'm
so
sure
much.
it's quite complicated. I have no doubt, and I look forward to the opportunity to come visit and take a look and see the shop floor. Would love to do that.
Consider it an open invitation.
Thank you. I'm going to take you up on that.
Yeah, please do.
So, if another manufacturer asked you for the top three things they should focus on to improve retention, what would you tell them?
First of all, make sure that you have high standards and high standards in terms of character of people. Start there. Start with the character of your people. The 12 points of culture is a great tool for that.
Absolutely. It defines the behaviors. We don't all know how we're supposed to behave when we come into a new work environment, right? I mean, and that aligns you with the behavior and makes it very clear what's expected of you, the 12 points for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. And make sure that your benefits are competitive. And if you're a very small company, sometimes that's hard to do. You have to get creative. So doing it in other ways, we have crawfish boils. We celebrate things. We have events to celebrate things because when you're at the office, I like to use analogies. So when you're at the office, to me, it's like you're on the football field, game on,
Yeah.
game faces on,
Game
it gets
on.
pretty intense. So you gotta cut that off and you gotta get out and go eat some crawfish together, go break bread together. and get to know each other on a human level. So make sure that even if you're not at the level yet where you can be as competitive with benefits as larger companies, do other things, the signs, the parking signs you talked about earlier. I mean, that doesn't cost a lot of money, but it means a lot to the employees.
Absolutely. That's
Make sure that you
recognition.
offer a library or training resources for people to do, not just get better at their job, but to become better as a human being too. Self-help
Absolutely.
books and things like that. The character is so important in any organization. And so I hope that answered your question, but those are the things that I think come to mind that are most important. And I think that
Mhm.
really have attributed to our success too.
So what do you think the future holds?
Well, I hope that, nobody invents something that where a spring isn't needed. They
Right
will.
there. I think, it's too many places we use springs.
Yes, it's funny you say that. When I was brought into the business, back in the mid-90s, I mean, by the way, James hired me into the business, so we go back a minute. But, when I was brought into the business, someone said, about 80% of everything mechanically made uses a spring. Now that I've been in the business 30 years, I'd say it's closer to 90%,
Yeah,
there's just
absolutely.
there's springs everywhere. So, I don't think technology is gonna, play
AI
much.
is not gonna come get you.
I don't think so. I don't think anything AI can do what our guys do in the shop. Spring making, I think it was James that told me this specifically, that spring making is 60% art. And I never really understood that fully until we started Katy Spring and I was out in the shop. Man, you got to get creative. I'll give you a
Absolutely.
specific example. And there was a lot of creativity, especially in the early days when we had very little equipment and, we needed to come up with a method to basically wrap a spring around another piece of wire. Okay.
Mhm.
And so but the wire needed to spin. And this is one of the main things James is so good at. He said, go to a Bass Pro Shop and get some swivels.
Right, there you go.
I didn't question. I just went and got him and brought him back, and he built this thing to make this thing spin so that the wire could wrap around it. I mean,
Mhm.
I was just amazed at not just watching this, but it was a lot of fun being a part of it. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
the creative side of spring making is very prevalent. It's as opposed to machining, and don't get me wrong, I know machining or any type of manufacturing
Right.
takes some form of creativity because you are making
Absolutely.
something. But,
Mhm.
it's more so when you're bending metal as opposed to cutting metal. Because when you
Yeah.
bend metal and then you gotta heat the metal so it stays in the position that you want it, and when you heat it, it moves a little bit, whereas you're cutting the metal, it just kinda sits there. And
Right.
again, not to downplay anything that a machinist or anybody else does in manufacturing, but I think the art part of spring making comes very much into play.
Absolutely, and I can see how retention is a critical success factor for your environment in that regard.
Yeah, because you don't wanna reinvent the wheel every time, the creativity.
Those are hard-earned skills.
Right, and you want that creativity to come out for parts that you've made for years and years to improve the efficiencies and things like that, and, I see that quite a bit. Our guys, I'm just amazed at the things. I go out there and I look at some of the setups on certain machines, and I can remember the part, how it was set up when I saw that a few years ago, and I said, "Oh, I see what you did there," and, it's just neat. They're always figuring out ways to do things, better and more efficiently.
Continuous improvement. So
Continuous improvement.
do you have, like, an effort around that, like a Kaizen workshop or a continuous improvement effort? You mentioned some root cause analysis meetings and things like that. Is that a regular activity?
Yes. So we have an MRB committee and they review any issues. And it's not just say if a part's bad or a part
Mhm.
gets rejected or anything like that. Yes, that's part of it as well. But it can be really just anytime a customer may not like something and
Yeah.
there's something we need to look at. Say if we shipped parts to the wrong location or something like that. I mean, that's probably going to be an administrative error, but that goes into MRB and we
Mhm.
review that and we come up with corrective actions and put those in place as a result of that. So we get better with every MRB, by solving every MRB case. We've also been ISO certified since 2008, but from day one, we ran the company to ISO. And I remember our first purchase order. It was the three founders of the company sitting around a small wooden kitchen table going, okay, we're not ISO. We can't afford it. We're going to get there someday, but we're going to start being ISO right now. And
Right.
so we started with that first job. So then when we actually did go for our certification, I think we were well ahead of the curve.
Awesome. What a great story Katy Spring is. And I can see why you're so proud of the company and your team. It's fantastic. Well, so go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was to say, more accurate, it's our company. So there's 3 partners right now, but yes, to what you said, I'm very proud of everyone at Katy Spring, what we've all accomplished over the years.
No, I can hear that. I can hear that and see it, and I love it. I love it. I would love to meet some of your employees and see, see the environment live because I'm confident it would be a very energizing place to come visit. So I look forward to coming to see you.
Very good. We look forward to having you, Lisa.
Thank you, sir. So that's all the time we've got today. Scott, thank you so much for sharing all your valuable insights, demonstrating that there are a whole host of positive outcomes when you have high retention levels. And more, from a customer's perspective, these benefits are numerous, but continuity of contact, confidence in who's handling their product, these are priceless in customer service. So I really applaud you and Katy Spring for having a high retention level and making that a competitive advantage. And also thank you to the audience. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back on our next episode. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you today.
Thank you, Lisa. I enjoyed that. That was fun. Thank you so much.